Welcome to Wannabe Clutter-Free, formerly Wannabe Minimalist, the podcast for busy families who are tired of the chaos, fed up with being overwhelmed, and ready to enjoy life again. Each week, we talk about how to let go of the clutter so that you can focus on the things that actually matter. And it's not just physical clutter. We talk about the mental and emotional stuff too, because if it's holding you back, it's time to ditch it. I share what I've done in my own life to declutter, organize, and calm the chaos, but you won't just hear it from me. There are amazing guests too. It's practical, doable, and simple for those of us that want to be clutter-free. Well, hey there, my friend. Welcome back to the show. You are listening to episode 213, and on today's episode, I am going to be chatting about our recent trip to Europe. I sent an email out last week asking if you were interested in hearing about our trip or what aspects of our trip you were interested in hearing about. I got a ton of response, but the number one thing that most of you said you were interested in is how I packed for a month-long trip in just a carry-on suitcase. That is right. Actually, each of us had a carry-on suitcase and a backpack. So very standard American flying practices of what you're allowed to bring on the airline with you. There were a few little snafus when it came to Europe talking about some of these things. We will get into that. But yeah, we did it for a full month. I don't think I repeated outfits too many times, although we're going to talk about that in one point as well. And I'm just really excited to share this with you, especially because it's coming off of the tail end of the Capsule Wardrobe Edition for the Chaos to Calm Summit that I just ran this year. So I ran two summits this year, one in January, one in May. The second one was all about capsule wardrobes. So this was really great to take all of that information that I learned from that and put it into practice. But before we dive in, though, I just want to say a quick thank you to you for joining me today. I am so happy you are here. And if you enjoy this show, can you do me a favor and just share it with a friend? Or you can leave a rating and a review for the show if you don't really feel like sharing it with a friend. That way, internet strangers can find it too, which is also super helpful. All right, thanks to you. Mwah, kudos. All right, let's dive into it. I have 7 things to share with you. I'm pulling out my list here. Okay, so I have 7 tips that I want to share with you, kind of what I learned. Here's my notes. If you're watching this on YouTube, you can see I have handwritten notes with me today. I'm also coming to you live from our bedroom, which is not normally where I record. It is summer break here, and so we got a play date going on. My husband's got a meeting going, and since we just came back, I didn't really get to prep for this, so we're doing the best we can. All right, so let's dive in. Okay, so number 1, when you are planning for a trip, if you're packing for a trip, you've got a trip coming up, summertime, maybe you've got trips still this summer, and you want to know how to pack light. The first thing you need to do is look at your destination, right? We went to Europe. We were mainly in cities. For a long time, we were trying to decide how we wanted to, plan out the whole month. We had several points we really wanted to hit. It was a process. It was difficult. I know, wah, first world problems, right? Trying to figure out where to go spend a month in Europe. I know. But it was really hard to narrow it down. And so we decided, we at one point had thought we wanted to do a beach week, and we were going to be in Menorca, but didn't end up fitting with the style of where we wanted to go and what we wanted to see. So we ended up scrapping that part. And for most of the trip, we were in cities. And so that is a different packing venture than a beach vacay, right? We all know this. Like if I'm going to go spend a weekend in LA, it's going to be very different than if I'm spending a weekend on the beach here in San Diego, right? It's going to be a little bit different vibe. And it was a different vibe. So we had to pack accordingly. So I have a few questions I want you to ask yourself as you're starting these logistics, right? We want to start logistically, and then we're going to get into the clothing and those kinds of things. So the first question is, what's the weather going to be like? Now, I know this is not a 100%, but you're going to have an idea, right? Like we were in London, turned out it was really cold, but I kind of knew that was going to happen because we were in Scotland, how many years ago was that? 10 years ago, we were in Scotland in kind of the same time frame, and it was so cold. So I knew that we were going to need a couple layers. And those are kinds of the things you need to keep in mind. Like, is it maybe a place that could be a little bit chillier than we expect? Just look at the weather, look at the averages. I know sometimes if you're planning a couple months out, it's not going to be an exact science, but pay attention to what the averages are. That's going to give you a really good idea of what you should pack. And then you're going to pack a couple options. I know when I say options, you're thinking, but this is carry-on, Dee. Like, this is carry-on. I'm not going to have that many options. We'll get there. You can have options and even keep it light and small. Okay, so that's number one. Look at the weather. And then number two is think about your activities. I talked about this a little bit with like city activities versus a beach activity. So obviously in cities, you're going to be walking around a lot. That's one of my favorite things to do whenever we travel is just walking and just looking and stopping in whatever little store catches our fancy. I know I don't shop that much, but we did bring some souvenirs back and just having those moments, right? What are you going to be doing? Are your kids young? Are you going to be on a lot of playgrounds? We've done that before too. Are your kids now a little bit older, but you're still going to be doing kid museums, things that are interactive. You're obviously going to be stopping a lot more along the way. You're not going to spend a whole day in a museum because they're not going to be able to handle that or want to do that. But what are those things you're going to be able to do? Knowing like if you're going to have a huge day out, what does that entail? And that's going to really help you kind of decide what kind of pieces you need and what things can stay at home. The third question to ask yourself is, what is the length of your trip? So for us, going for 28 days, well, we're not going to pack 28 pairs of underwear, 28 pairs of socks, 28 bras, and things like that. I don't own that many things anyway, so we know we're going to have to do some laundry. And that is the fourth question to ask yourself, is your access to laundry. But let's go back to the third question. Generally, the longest I will plan for a trip is 7 days. So as long as I have enough items for 7 days, I think this time I had enough for 5 because once we planned everything out and I looked at where we would be and the stops and our access to laundry number 4, I knew I didn't need all 7. But generally, a good length of time to plan for is 7 days. Even if your trip is a little bit longer than that, you will likely have access to laundry. So that just gives you a good parameter. If your trip is less than 7 days, then you can just plan for that time and you're not going to need to get the access to laundry. If it is longer than that, then okay, I need to be able to wash my things. Maybe if I don't have access to a washer or dryer, I can clean my underwear, my socks, and my bras in the sink and let them dry overnight. And that is going to at least get you to a place where you can rewear some of your clothes unless it's really gross and hot and sweaty. That's going to be just fine. Okay, so then of course, number 4, access to laundry. And I want to give you a little tip. Pretty much everywhere in the world, you're going to find a laundromat, or you're going to find someone that's able to do your laundry, or you're going to have access to a washer and dryer. For us, we stayed with friends for 2 weekends. The end of the first week we were there, and then the end of the second week we were there. So that was really easy. We knew we would have access to laundry those 2 weeks. Then we had an Airbnb with a washer and dryer in it, and then we just came home and did laundry at home. I only had to do laundry 3 times over the course of a month. Made it really simple. However, previously, when we have traveled before, we've either done Airbnbs where we've had access to laundry that way, or I have done laundry at a laundromat in Lisbon. I've done laundry at a laundromat in Munich, Germany, and probably other places. But I also had my laundry done in Argentina and Guatemala. So there are going to be places it is possible to find other people to do your laundry if you don't have access to a washer and dryer. So let's just be creative. Let's Google. We all have Google now on our phone that are with us in our pockets and look things up like that, or look up a laundromat if you're not comfortable asking other people to do your laundry. But it's sometimes a really great service, so don't discount that if you're concerned. Great. So that takes us through point number 1, which is that first logistical of looking at your destination and kind of mapping out what you think you're going to need and, pre-planning. So tip number 2, or your task number 2, is to pick the right tools. So again, you want to look at, where am I going? How difficult is it going to be for me to have a rolling suitcase versus the backpack? Who's coming on the trip? Are they going to be able to carry a backpack, or is a rolling suitcase a better idea? What mode of transportation are you taking? How are you traveling? That's really question number 1. How are you traveling? Are you planning to be a backpacker? Or are you planning to do a little more luxe traveling these days? In my 20s, I would have been a backpacker all the way. Now that we have a tween daughter, she's not going to be able to carry the backpack for the full trip and all of the weight of her stuff. I mean, maybe she could, but I don't want the complaining. And she loves wheeling around on a travel suitcase, like, pushing it like it's a go-kart. She loves it, sitting on it and pushing it. She had a blast with that. So I'm going to go the rolling suitcase route. So we had 3 rolling suitcases, which means then you have to figure out trains, planes, automobile, right? The train and the automobile, super easy. You're obviously going to be able to just take them on, put them on the luggage rack, or pop them in the trunk. If they're smaller, if they're carry-on, they're easy to pop in the trunk. We didn't have any problems with that space. On the airplane, here's where our little snafu came in. In the US, it's just size-based. We're not weighing bags yet at this point. In Europe, they weighed our bags. So had I known that, there were so many moving parts, some of the pieces fell through the cracks for sure. And the weight thing was one of them. I hadn't planned this. So when we flew from London to Switzerland, so we started in London, then we did Switzerland, did a road trip for 3 days in Germany, and then ended up in Munich. And then we took a train from Munich to Ljubljana, Slovenia. Then we took a plane from Ljubljana to Paris, and then a plane home. Okay, so that's kind of what you're seeing. We had a couple cars, we had some trains, and we had a few planes. The first plane, they actually weighed our bags. So size-wise, for the measurements, we were within it, but I didn't even think about the weight thing because it just isn't something we're used to in the US. So we were allowed 8 kilograms in the rolling suitcase and 4 kilograms in the backpack. Now, here's a little tipsy doodle. They didn't weigh the backpacks. So had I known and planned ahead, I would have just taken the toiletries out of the suitcase and popped them in my backpack right before we hopped on the plane, because then I could always swap them around, or it wasn't going to be heavy. I wasn't actually carrying this much around very long, right? Just down the what am I thinking of? The jetway? Or just down, right? Just that part where you're going from checking in to getting on the airplane's pretty short. We could have dealt with a little extra weight for a few minutes, and then we could have kept our bags with us. Was it a big deal? Thankfully, they didn't charge us for the gate check. They just checked them and we picked them up on the other end. And flying a more budget airline, they're probably going to do that and actually charge you if you had to gate check it. So could have been a big problem, ended up not being a big problem for us, but it was an aha moment of like, right, you have to remember this kind of stuff. Now, my husband's bag was 8 point something. So as long as it fell under 9, they counted it and it was fine. They didn't weigh his backpack. Both our daughter and myself, I think they were within the 9s. So we actually could have made it within the 8 kilogram range, but just didn't. And that was just something to keep in mind for the future. We definitely made sure on our next flight that we were within the weight limits because it was a cheaper airline and we wanted to make sure we weren't charged for it. So that was definitely something we made sure to pay attention to. So tools-wise, you're going to need either a backpack or a suitcase, and you're going to want to map out those tools and figure out what you need. The last tool I suggest you have is a luggage scale. We thankfully had a scale at the Airbnb we were staying in, but it was really cumbersome to try to weigh ourselves and then hold the bag and weigh it, and it's not very accurate. So a luggage scale, which I actually had at home and just didn't even bring with me, I wasn't even thinking about it, is really helpful. And they don't take up a ton of space. I'll link to one of my favorites in the show notes. So if you're looking for one, you could pick that up. It's pretty easy. All right. Well, now that we have the logistical things out of the way, we're going to jump into the actual clothing that I packed for the trip. But we're going to take a quick break to hear from this week's sponsors. Be right back.
I'm Margaret.
And I'm Amy.
And together we host the podcast, What Fresh Hell? Laughing in the Face of Motherhood.
Margaret, I would say you're sort of a where are my keys kind of mom.
Correct. Sometimes a where are my kids kind of mom. Well, you're, Amy, more of a we were supposed to leave 35 seconds ago, mom.
I mean, touche. In each episode of What Fresh Hell, we come at a topic from our usually completely opposite perspectives. I bring the research.
And I bring kind of the gimlet eye. Like, is that research really going to work, people?
And almost 10 million downloads later, we're still laughing.
We also talk to experts in the parenting field, plus parents with stories we can all learn from.
We make each other laugh, we challenge each other's assumptions, and we have what we think is the best parenting community on the internet.
Check out What Fresh Hell? Laughing in the Face of Motherhood wherever you listen to podcasts.
So let's talk about the clothes that I actually took on the trip with me. And it was so interesting that this felt, maybe not, I might have actually planned this, that it actually came right after the Capsule Wardrobe Summit that I hosted in May. So it was so nice to be able to take all of that information that I gathered from that summit and put it right into practice and actually test a lot of the theories that I learned along the way. And I'm going to do something really special. I actually hadn't planned on this, but as I'm talking through this, I think it would be so helpful for you if this is a subject that you are interested in and you want to know more about capsule wardrobes or packing light, any of that kind of stuff. Well, I had 21 experts come and talk about this kind of stuff, so I want you to be able to get that information as well. I'm going to open up the videos just for 1 week. When this airs, you will have access to those in the link in the show notes, so go there and check it out and see how you can get access for all of those talks from the speakers. And it's only going to be available for 1 week. And then I only do summits a couple times a year. And the next one will be in January. But right now, there are those really, really, really helpful 21 subjects all about capsule wardrobes and planning them. And, we talk about makeup and skincare and all that kind of stuff. So anyway, check it out if you're interested. But here is what I took on our trip. And I'm going to give you my kind of nitty gritty, the base things that I ended up really glomming from that summit and putting into practice. So the first one was to choose my color scheme. And this is tip number 3. If anything else, other than the only other thing that I think is really important, and it's tip number 7, I'm going to get into it a little bit. I'm going to give you a little spoiler. It has to do with your personal style, but that's probably the biggest thing in order to feel comfortable with the clothes. But in order to actually create a capsule wardrobe, the color scheme is like the number one, because you can cut out so much stuff if it doesn't mix and match with the colors that you pick for this trip, for this one capsule that you put together. So if you were terrified about having a capsule for long term, well, don't worry about it. It's a short little experiment, right? 1 month of my life living with these clothes was not a big deal. If I hated them, well, I can go shopping in Europe. Oh, wow, wow. And if I love them, well, then great. I can continue on with this later. If I didn't really like the colors, I can switch them out. It's not a huge deal. So generally, you're going to want to stick with one base color. So whether that's a brown, a navy, a gray, or a black, those are kind of your big base, normal base colors. You're going to pick one of those. Now, I chose navy because I had my colors done, and turns out black is not my color. Who knew? Well, now I do. So now I know that I need to choose different colors around my face, which I did. I didn't wear black on my upper half of my body the entire month. And it was, I'm not going to say life-changing because it's just clothes, but it was pretty remarkable. I really, really enjoyed it. And so it was nice to be able to know that that is a color I don't have to go back to if I don't want to. I did have one pair of black pants, and I'll tell you about those in a minute. But that is first. Choose your base color. So my base color was navy. Then you're going to choose an accent color. Now, if you're trying to keep things small, choose one accent color. My accent color was green. Actually, this shirt that I'm wearing right now, if you're watching this video, was my travel shirt. It's a merino wool shirt. Absolutely loved it. It definitely held up. We'll get to that in a second. But so my accent color was green, and it was a couple different variations of green. So I had this one, I had a lighter green, and then I had a greenish dress, like a teal dress that I took with me. So really just a couple pieces in green. And then I had neutral. So I had white, cream, and then I had one striped shirt. I had a chambray shirt. So again, denim, right? So these are my colors that I'm taking. So one base color, one accent color, and then any neutrals you want to add in, as many of those as you want. Obviously, we're going to have a limit here because it's the capsule wardrobe, but it just makes it a little bit easier for you to know where you're starting from or what you're working with. All right, so that is tip number 3. Make sure you choose a color scheme. It's so important. It needs its own tip because that is really the essence of a capsule wardrobe and the essence of the ability to mix and match and be able to put all your pieces together, and how I could create, I didn't even count how many I could create, but I could create over a month of outfits without having to repeat with just the 14 pieces that I took. So let me tell you about those 14 pieces. This is tip number 4. Choose your essential pieces. So we've already talked about where we're going, what kind of clothing we're going to need, how we're packing it. So now we know what we need, the space we have available. We have our color palette. So we need to choose our essential pieces. So essential pieces for me, we're in a city. I'm going to need a comfortable pair of walking shoes. So I had a really cute white pair of street shoes. Then I had a pair of flats, ballet flats. I toyed with the idea of taking a pair of sandals, but I didn't end up taking a pair of sandals. I probably wouldn't have even worn them if I did take them. Maybe one day I would have worn them, but it wasn't worth packing them for a month-long trip when I knew that it wasn't likely that I was going to wear them. I only wore those ballet flats a couple times. I had them just in case we went out for a dinner. You never know when you might need something that's a little dressier. I remember one time we were traveling, we got invited to a wedding. And obviously we hadn't known we were going before we left. So it's nice to have a couple versatile pieces that I easily could have dressed up if we had gotten invited to something a little bit nicer this time. And those ballet flats, they were comfortable enough to walk around the city. I wasn't going to walk 20,000 steps in them like I did on several days with the street shoes, but they were great for dinners or nicer occasions if we needed them. And I did wear them a couple times. So I didn't feel so bad about trekking them all the way across the world. And they were really light and didn't take up much space. Also, key point, they were not wedges, they were flats, so they didn't take up much room in my luggage. And they didn't weigh anything. Okay, so let's talk about the 14 essential pieces that I took. I took 2 pairs of pants. One of them was a pair of black yoga pants. Those were my travel pants. They were comfy. I wanted to be comfortable on 9-hour flights and long train rides and car rides and those kinds of things when I needed them. So I had 1 pair of black yoga pants, 1 pair of jeans. I had 1 pair of navy shorts, and then I had 2 dresses. My dresses are kind of like bottoms, but they're their own pieces, so we can keep them separate if we want. So 2 dresses, 1 a navy tank dress, and then 1 teal midi length dress. Then I had 6 tops. Those are t-shirts and 1 dolman sweater. And then I had 2 long sleeve layers, and that was a white linen button-up long sleeve and a chambray button-up long sleeve. Then I had 1 merino wool light gray sweater. That was also my travel day shirt. I would have that in case it was cold on an airplane. It was a really great layering piece. Turns out, let's get to merino wool. Let's go back to that. This shirt and that sweater, merino wool, loved it. Performed brilliantly. I was warm when I needed to be warm. I was cool when I needed to be cool. It wasn't suffocating. It didn't feel heavy, but it felt comforting and warm. It isn't itchy. It's not super soft, but it's not itchy. It's kind of an interesting way, like fabric to describe, but it's great because, when you travel, I get a little anxious when I travel. I love traveling, but I still have those jitters of like, did I remember everything? Did we forget to turn something off at the house? Oh my gosh, I have a bunch of packages I wasn't expecting and having our neighbors pick them up. Or is everything going well? Is anybody stressed? Like, I'm hungry, I'm tired, I got to do all this stuff, right? So you get a little anxious, sweats, and those are stinky. I don't like anxious sweat. But having this shirt, merino wool, the shirt didn't get stinky. I was shocked. I could wear it for a day and a half when we were traveling, and it was fine. I felt okay when we got to our destination, and it, wasn't a big deal. And I didn't have to wash it right away, which is also great because, again, if you paid attention on the laundry segment, basically we went a whole week without being able to do laundry, and having a stinky shirt, I'm giving a thumbs up already in the video, having a stinky shirt in my bag with all my other clothes, I didn't really want that to happen. So it was nice to have something that wasn't stinky that I could have basically as the first thing I wore. So that was always nice. So definitely I recommend merino wool. High quality merino wool was amazing. So definitely check it out if you are trying to pack lighter and really maximize the items that you have. It's a great place to start. Okay, other things I had in there so those were the 14 pieces of clothes. I just named them all. But then I also had 2 pairs of shoes. We talked about that. I had 1 pair of tights, which helped with the London part because, again, it was cold in London. And then I had 1 bathing suit because we weren't quite sure if we would end up at a beach or not, or who knew. So a bathing suit is always a must, I think, when you're traveling, especially for a long trip. And then I had 1 pair of pajamas, which was great because when we stayed with our friends, I wanted to have a nice pair of pajamas that I just felt comfortable in. And it was really helpful and nice to have a nice pair of pajamas. So those were a new purchase for me before the trip. And so every travel day, I basically wore merino wool shirt, sweater, and the yoga pants. Those were my plain days. And then, I tried to mix and match. I did rewear things a couple times. We'll get to that in just a second. But it was amazing that I was able to mix and match so much and not get bored of my clothes. That was one of the comments I got when I asked, was someone said, I want to know how you pack for a month. I'm sure you never want to see those clothes again or wear them again. But the trick was, I loved those clothes and I still love those clothes. I cannot wait to wear them again. The funny thing was, when I got back and I was putting clothes on this weekend, I was overwhelmed actually, even by just the few other pieces that were in my closet, because they don't necessarily all go with the capsule wardrobe. So I'm looking forward to decluttering my closet, getting all the things out of there that no longer coordinate with the new stuff, because the new stuff felt so right for me. And that is one of the things that a capsule wardrobe can allow you to do, is just not stress about it, because you just feel like it's home, right? You feel like it's who you are and what you want to be wearing. So that was a big thing that really helped me. So actually, no, I'm not sad about, I'm actually excited to keep wearing these clothes. We've already done our laundry, did it right away when we got home. And so now I can wear the things again. All right, we're going to take one more quick break. And when we come back, I'm going to wrap up with how to be creative with your clothing and then a couple extra tips that will really take you to the next level. So tip number 5 is to be creative. One of the ways that I was creative was I put things together in a way that I wouldn't normally have done before. It was a fun experiment. And when you go on vacation, that's one of the great things. You get to step outside of your normal rut, your normal comfort zone, do things a little bit differently. So I took advantage of that. And honestly, I didn't take that much advantage of it. I just put things together a little differently than I would have when I was at home. One of my favorite creative ways that I wore that dress was I actually had a navy dress and a navy t-shirt. And my navy t-shirt was almost the same color as the dress. So I had worn the dress once, but then to make it feel a little bit differently, I put the navy shirt on top of it, tied it in a knot in the back, tucked the knot under, and now I actually looked like I had a different dress on, which is a slightly different cut, right? I could wear my scarf if I wanted to, and that just kept things really simple. We had to be really creative in London, because like I said, it was cold and we had known it was going to be, I knew it was going to be a little bit chilly, but it was colder than we thought it was going to be. And so we actually ended up having to buy our daughter a new jacket. So she got a souvenir, and those are my favorite kind of souvenirs, things that you're going to use and cherish and be able to look back on versus just something that's going to hang on the wall. We did get a couple pictures, but we also picked up things that we can use in our daily life. And I'm sure I'll be talking about that on Instagram or things like that. And speaking of being creative with these pictures, I want to make sure that I am displaying the outfits that I wore. I tried to take pictures along the way. I will have pictures both on Instagram if you're not watching this on YouTube, or if you're on YouTube, I should be trying to show them coming up and editing those into this video as well. All right, but let's talk about how we were creative in London. So you had to get layered, right? You had to go from what could have been really hot days at the end of our trip where we didn't have air conditioning. So I knew I needed to pack light things to, starting off in London where it was going to be chilly and potentially rain every day. So the first day was the travel day. I had just my regular outfit on. And then I also put the chambray shirt on, which I could put under that sweater if I got chilly, but I didn't end up getting too chilly that first evening. It was actually a beautiful day. Day 2 was cold, so I wore jeans, I wore a t-shirt, then I wore my white linen shirt, long sleeve, with my merino wool sweater on top and a scarf. And so that way I was able to layer that and keep myself warm with all of those different layers. On day 3, we were only there for 3 days. I wore my dress, that tank dress with a t-shirt over that. I had the tights on, and then I wore that merino wool sweater with the chambray shirt over it and tied that. So it didn't feel frumpy. I was concerned about that, and I actually tried it on before I left. That's one of the tips, is make sure you are testing your pieces and trying them out. So if you want to try to do something that's a little creative, do it at home in the comfort of your home when you have a full mirror in front of you. Try things on, test them out. I tested multiple versions of that skirt with a sweater with a long sleeve. I thought maybe I could tie the sweater. It just didn't fit right. I didn't like how it was with the sweater on top. So I put the chambray shirt on top, and being able to tie that up made it cinch in around my waist and made me feel good about wearing it versus feeling frumpy with a long sweater and a skirt that wasn't fitted. You have to experiment and play around and just try things out, right? Even if you think it's going to be crazy. Like when I was trying these clothes on, I remember our daughter walked in and she was like, ew, I don't like it. And I was like, I know, it's okay. I don't like it either. It's fine. I'm just trying things on. I just wanted to see what it looked like. I didn't think I was going to like it, but I just wanted to try it. But being able to experiment and put things in different combinations is one of the wonderful parts about a capsule wardrobe. And you can see, and you might be surprised that something you didn't think was going to work together actually might work together. So just give it a try. Just be creative. Be open to the process. And yeah, those were some of the ways I moved things around. And I could have put any t-shirt over those dresses and then just kind of tied them off on the side so that I still had a waist. And so it still accentuated the parts of my body I wanted to show off with, not being too revealing or frumpy. Either one. I don't want to be on either of the spectrum. I like to be right in the middle. All right, so that's number 5, be open to being creative. And then tip number 6 is to be okay with re-wearing something. It is 100% okay to re-wear outfits, especially if, you can wear them back to back. Who cares? No one really cares. It's a tip for you. But if you're not comfortable with that, well, then wear them every week. It is fine. I even had enough outfits where I didn't have to. I could mix and match enough where I didn't have to re-wear things at all. But there were certain pieces I was drawn to. And it was interesting to pay attention to the ones that I liked more than the other, right? What were the comfortable outfits that I gravitated toward? We all have them, and it is okay. It's fine to have those pieces. And so if you rewear things more than once, that is perfectly fine. In fact, it's better than fine. It's what you should be doing. Like, let's rewear our clothes. Let's be okay with that. Like, none of us are celebrities on the red carpet. And if you are a celebrity on the red carpet, can you help us normalize re-wearing things? It is okay. I get the designers are sending you things, you're not buying them, but let's stop trying to impress people that don't really care in the first place. Okay, so re-wear things, wear things that you love, and go for it, okay? So I did double up on a couple outfits, and that was fine. Okay, so that's number 6, which also is gonna help you cut down on this anxiety of having to have everything perfect or make sure you have enough clothing, right? 14 pieces, I could definitely make over 28 outfits. And I even rewore a couple things that were just kind of go-tos, especially when it was the same weather, right? The weather was really up and down. Some days were really rainy, some days were really hot. So being able to be flexible and go with that. And then it ended up that I rewore a couple things. No big deal. All right, and then my last tip with you is to embrace your personal style. My style is very simple, very minimalistic, very classic, put together with a little bit of an edge. I like to have a little bit of detail here and there. Even simple details like a V-neck, right? That's going to be a little bit of a detail. The way the skirts gather, like where they gather for my dress or things like that. A little button detail on a few of my shirts. The way the sleeve is cuffed. They're just simple little details, but they give you enough of a visual interest that it's enough for me. I'm not really into big print. I think I had stripes with me, so I don't do big and bold. I do kind of classic and neutral and toned down, but it's very comfortable for me. I feel comfortable in any situation or setting that I find myself in. I easily could have taken one of my dresses and dressed it up if we had a dressy event to go to, but I also felt very comfortable doing things like an adventure park that we found where we were hanging on ropes and in safety harnesses and things like that. So that is what a classic personal style can do for you. It can take you from one end of the spectrum to the other. We could have had tea in London. And then, like I said, we did trampolining and adventure park. So those were really important for me to be able to do all of these different things and not let my clothing hold me back. I never want clothing to stand in the way of the life I want to be living. So for me, my personal style is relaxed, casual, but still put together and still feeling like I am myself and it feels like home. That is kind of how I describe it. So if you are curious, if you don't know what your personal style is, or you really are confused and don't know where to start, well, go ahead and check out the videos from the Chaos to Calm Summit. And it's just open for this week. So you'll be able to upgrade and get your lifetime access to just the speaker talks. Unfortunately, the speaker bonuses won't be available. Those are only available when you attend the summit, when it is actually happening. But there's still so much value in just those lessons. I am really excited for you to be able to get those. And I wasn't actually planning to launch them or release them, but it just seems like a perfect fit with this episode. So they're only going to be available for 1 week. So if you're listening to this late, I'm sorry. They might come available again, but make sure you're on the list for the next summit so that you don't miss those in the future. And so that really takes us to the end of this. So 7 tips for how you can pack light on your next vacation, really taking a more holistic approach and going for that capsule wardrobe, knowing that it's not permanent. This is just a test and experiment. Have fun with it and just enjoy yourself. So I cannot wait to hear if you're going to implement this on your trip, where you're going to go. Let me know if this was helpful. So you can find me on Instagram. I'm at Wannabe Clutter Free on all the social channels. You can send me an email, Deanna@wannabeclutterfree.com, or just leave a comment on this video or wherever you listen to podcasts. That would be great. All right. Next week, I will be talking with Jane Abrams about organization. She's a professional organizer and she comes and gives us some really great tips and tricks. So you are not going to want to miss that episode. Until next week, take care, keep things simple, choose experiences over things. And I do feel like a capsule wardrobe has allowed us to be able to do that, to have more freedom, to be able to do more instead of own more. So give it a try, and I can't wait to hear how it goes. I believe in you. I know you can do it. I'm Deanna Yates, and you've been listening to Wannabe Clutter Free. I'll see you next week. Cheers.